Valley Live presents Path to the Show with Prospects Live.
Hello, welcome into Path the Show on Valley Live and Stadium. We are the Prospects Live crew, and today we'll be breaking down the Red Sox farm system. We are Prospects Live. I'm Reese White, and this to my right is Drew Wheeler, and Drew is one of our amazing fantasy analysts. And what we try to do at Prospects Live is marry all the different platforms of baseball into your comprehensive minor league coverage. We have a Patreon that people can go support. I'm the pro lead, and like I mentioned before, Drew is one of our amazing fantasy analysts. How are you doing today, Drew?
Doing really well, Reese. It's always nice to talk to you, and especially to talk about a system as loaded and interesting as the Boston Red Sox system. Several crimson colored garments are rising to the top of the laundry pile of prospects. I'm looking forward to talking about them with you, buddy.
Me too. I mean, things didn't go exactly the way the Red Sox would have wanted on the major league level. They were exactly average. They were 500, 81 and 81, third in the American League East. And for a while, it looked like they were kind of in the playoff hopes. I mean, at one point, we got Danny Jansen. He played for technically both teams in the middle of a game,
Yeah.
but that seemed to be like the one highlight of their season. The pitching sort of faded towards the end of the season. They missed the postseason. Tristan Casas looked pretty good. And then you also found out that he likes to visualize himself in the batter's box, visualize pitches coming at him. So he's definitely quite the interesting guy. But this Red Sox team, it's actually kind of a team that's in transition because we're going to talk about like the top of their farm system's actually really, really deep and really, really strong. And then it's going to be, and a lot of those prospects, the top 4 or 5 of them are going to make their major league debut at some point in 2025. So what do you think is like their best avenue this offseason? Like, where would you like to go if you were a Boston Red Sox fan?
Ooh. If I were a Boston Red Sox fan, I don't know. I can speak on behalf of Red Sox fans, including my dear friend Alex Anderson. Hello at home, Alex. I I think that they need to spend, but carefully, because their offense is it's constructed pretty well from within. I think they could obviously add pieces, but I think a starting pitcher, maybe not Corbin Burns, Max Fried, Jack Flaherty level, but I think a Nathan Eovaldi, that would be an interesting player, pitcher specifically. I think they need a veteran starter. I'm not really opposed to maybe a Justin Verlander. That'd be kind of bizarre, but just somebody that can eat innings and lead and give kind of a little bit of veteran advice to the guys like Tanner Scott, Brian Bayo, the the
So,
ilk of theirs.
right, I think that they need some veteran leadership, especially because like their AAA team kind of has a few of their young and up and coming hitting prospects right there. In the Worcester Red Sox, they have a lot of really exciting talent. I mean, that things didn't, they didn't. I don't think they went too far in the postseason, but there was Kyle Teal made his debut at that point. Christian Campbell, who is the breakout prospect the breakout hitter in all of the minors. You had, mainstays like Marcelo Mayer and maybe the top prospect in all of baseball, Roman Anthony. So at one point, all 4 of those guys were being part of a Worcester Red Sox team, and at one point, they were all part of the Portland Sea Dogs. And then at certain points of their prospect development, they might have been part of the Greenville Drive. And then like Salem is a really interesting spot in their single A team because they have like one of the bigger like under the radar prospect breakouts in Franklin Arias, and Miguel Blaze was up there at one point. What do you think of like the Red Sox farm system looking at it from a top down view?
From the top down, I feel like over the last 2, maybe even 3 seasons, the Red Sox farm system has been outstanding. I feel like, with the exception of, the Brewers and the Dodgers, the Brewers obviously are kind of that pop up system where everybody seems valuable nowadays, but the Red Sox are kind of right there on their heels. The top 10 for the Red Sox are filled with guys who would be ones and twos around the league, right, Reese? You just mentioned a guy that we'll talk about in just a moment, Franklin Arias, who I think is being slept on still. And then, the top 5 on our list are filled with dudes who have either popped up, have immense hype and potential leading back to their days as top picks in the major league draft, and guys who I think we're going to see much sooner than later. This is an outstanding farm system, and it's illustrated by the fact that a guy like Richard Fitz, for instance, could theoretically start in the major league rotation. He didn't crack our top 10.
Yeah, he's someone who I'm very, like, excited about. He kinda just slots in as their 4 or 5 guy, like, at some point in the next season, and depending on how they wanna, handle service time and everything like that, but
Sure.
he's shown that he can pitch in the major leagues, get some outs and everything like that, so I think he's definitely someone who he's one of the many prospects that didn't make this top 10 list that is in this farm system that is incredibly talented, and I think that basically we should really, like, just start jumping into these top 10 because this top 10 is insanely talented, and I think so far it's the best one that we've done. We're gonna go to take our first break here on Path to the Show. Coming up, we will be breaking down prospects 10 through 6 in the Red Sox farm system. We'll be right back.
Valley Live's MILB channel is where baseball's future lives. Visit valleylive.com or download the app today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Path to the Show on Bally's Live and Stadium. We are the Prospect Live guys, and on today's episode, we're breaking down the top 10 prospects of the Boston Red Sox. And don't worry at home, we haven't gotten into the meat and potatoes just yet, but tuck in because we're about to start, Reese, with the number 10 prospect according to our team at Prospects Live, and it is none other than Chase Meadroth. And Meadroth, I know, Reese, we've called players vanilla in the past. Is it a stretch to say Chase Meadroth is maybe the most vanilla boy in all of the minors?
Ooh, I don't know. He might be like a French vanilla where it's a little bit exciting, but he's definitely
Okay.
someone that I really am in on. Like he's a very high floor, like probability, like big leaguer sort of type. Like he can just make contact. I think there's a touch more power in there than he's shown so far in his minor league career. I mean, this past season he hit 9 home runs. I think this is a guy who can hit like 15 to 18 home runs in a good year, hit 270, like, and he shows a good approach. I mean, he got on base at a 408 clip last year. The slugging wasn't great at 391. This is a dude who just hits. He's constantly hit his entire career. He just wakes up, and he's one of those guys. I had a scout once tell me that a guy feels like he wakes up on second base. That's what Chase Meadroth is. He's just always just making contact and everything. He's going to be like a leadoff hitter for like a less competitive team, but for a more competitive team, maybe he's like start of the second wave of the offense, sixth, seventh sort of hitter. He's someone who I'm really in on. I think that there's some versatility-ish on his defensive profile as well. Second base, third base. But yeah, I like Chase Meadroth. He's kind of like a French vanilla, like I said. A little bit exciting, but he's still vanilla in a way.
I I kind of when I think of Meadroth, I almost think of if I'm playing MLB The Show, I'd want him to bat eight or nine for me because he gets on
Yeah.
base. And then when we're coming back around, like you said, that second wave of the offense, I think we're on the same page there. Maybe just different paragraphs. French vanilla is good. I think Red Sox fans are going to look at Meadroth and want him to be Dustin Pedroia for a lot of different reasons, whether that's the body, it's the contact, it's kind of that defensive versatility. But I think that if he ends up as 70% of Luis Ariz, you have a major league player. You have a fantasy player that's probably valuable. I think even 85% of Luis Ariz is realistic for Meadroth. There's speed there too, but a French vanilla player all the same. I like that. I like that analogy a lot.
Yeah, and I think as far as I don't know if Luis Perales is the next guy on our list. I don't know what sort of vanilla he would be, but he's kind of like a high upside vanilla, I guess, to keep this analogy going and everything like that. I mean, it's a high octane fastball. It's touched 100 in the past. It's a really good slider, 85 to 87. I mean, he shows a really good splitter at 87 to 90. So he's kind of got like three distinct velocity buckets. He'll mix in a cutter every once in a while, and that's just sort of like fine. Like it's a below average pitch, but it's sort of the pitch that you use to kind of it's a fourth offering that a batter has to worry about. The control and command isn't anything to write home about. I do ultimately think he might end up being like a reliever because he did he's getting up there. He's on the 40 man. He's 21 years old. He just had Tommy John, so we won't see him until 2025 or it's like late in 2025, early 2026. He's just sort of he's going to be a good big leaguer. I just don't know how exciting of a big leaguer he's going to be.
The Tommy John really is kind of what throws the wrinkle in here. In fantasy circles, Reese, Perales was getting a ton of love. Very slender body, but like you said, the fastball just gas. The slider is losing a little bit of its luster in terms of being kind of the vogue pitch that it was maybe 5-7 years ago. But even still, four pitch mix, mostly average to above average stuff. I do think this might be a reliever. The more I think about it, I think maybe it's the injury that kind of shoves him in that direction, but I don't think that there's really anything stopping him from being kind of that back end bully. I mean, a fastball that tops out at 100, you got to think in a one inning spurt, he could theoretically be at 99, maybe even dial up even with a slider. I mean, if he's got fastball slider that are both above average, and then you mix that splitter in every so often, or I guess he could tweak the slider into a cutter, but I don't know. I think that Perales is probably a major leaguer, as you said. The fastball alone is probably enough to be a bullpen piece in the majors. I would like to see him get a chance to start. I just don't know that it'll happen based on the injury, especially. And now, he's on the 40 man, and that's going to just accelerate things. It's going to be tricky.
Yeah, he's someone who I think like, he's going to be like a really good eighth inning guy. I think on a
Mm.
championship team, there's going to be like a lights out closer, but he's going to be part of the bridge to an end of the game. So, and then going from him to kind of like he at one point was the hottest prospect name in every single circle that I was in, every group chat that I was in was talking about him. It's Franklin Arias, and I think we kind of have him lower than most because I do think he is further away. He did really hit well in the complex, but he really struggled a little bit in single A. But it was 18, so he was like super young for the level and struggling at single A as an 18-year-old with the growing divide between the complex and single A. I think that the gap in talent there, like it is harder to hit in single A than it has been for a while, especially coming up from the complex. So I think he's someone who people need to not jump off the ship yet, but he's definitely someone who I'm in on. It's a good athlete. There's a lot of projection left. It's a good frame too. I think I'm all in on Franklin Arias, and I wish that we could have found a way to be a little bit more aggressive on him. But this system, dude, it is crazy.
It's a great system, and I'm with you because there are guys above that personally I have Arias ahead of, at least in fantasy perspective. But it's not exclusively a fantasy list. I'm glad to give my analysis, and I think that the best analysis I could give here is that Arias is incredibly valuable in fantasy right now. Again, 18 years old, as you alluded, single A. I think that the 2028-9 Red Sox have another up the middle weapon here. Tons of contact, at least. I think it was like a 350, 470, 580 slash, 6 homers and 30 steals in the complex, which, not otherworldly numbers, just very, very, very good. Probably like a B plus A minus type if you're going to give it a school grade. Excellent bat to ball, though. And then just single A, like you said, it was a hiccup, but I think that it's gonna show itself to be a bit of an anomaly. Give him another year, and we'll see what he does. It's great contact, good swing decisions. He's advanced, he's athletic, and this is a guy that I was tickled to get in my home dynasty leagues prospect draft. I think in like the 6th or 7th round this year, and so that would have put him at like prospect number 200. I thought it was incredible value, and I recommend all of you get him much earlier than I did in your leagues at home.
Yeah, speaking about tools and everything like that, we got Miguel Blaze. He's one of my absolute favorites. The only problem with Miguel Blaze is I wonder if he's going to make enough contact. He's
Mm.
super loose. Like it's a wiry build. There's more projection coming as well. I mean, he's someone who the swing's beautiful. I just think he has trouble. He has a lot of trouble with pitches on the outer third of the zone. He doesn't struggle with like reading spin as much as I think that he does. He just has a problem with like laying off pitches that he doesn't need to swing at. He does chase a little bit, but he's definitely like he's got all the tools. Like he can back his way into being like a really good like fantasy asset, even if he doesn't hit very much. Like he could be like a like I mean, in his best years, he could do 2020, even if he's hitting like 240, and is kind of the ceiling I put for him. But I think there's so much more in there for him. I don't know what you think about Miguel Blaze.
I like Blaze, but like you said, it all comes down to can he make contact? He essentially is the opposite side of the coin of Chase Meadroth that we spoke about a minute ago. Lots of sizzle. You're wondering how much steak is going to be in the bite, whereas with Meadroth, you got to have some kind of sauce there because he is dry as a bone. He's French vanilla. Miguel Blyce, on the other hand, would be like uh, chocolate covered strawberry or some kind of nonsense with sprinkles. It's like you said, there's upside here of 2020, but in order to make either power or speed count, you have to make contact. And that's, again, the bugaboo for Blyce. Still a very interesting prospect. I mean, 200 prospect leagues needs to be rostered just on upside alone, but, you know, I think double A next season is not out of the question. I don't know. It's suspect. I'd
I
like to see him do very well, though.
He is a very divisive prospect for sure. Like I think that there are
Sure.
people like I know I'm part of like the Blyce Hive and everything like that, and I love him as a prospect. I think that he's got a lot of tools, and I think that he's going to figure out the swing decisions. And I think he's going to work on the approach. I do always fall for these 10 types of prospects. I don't know, like I don't know what I know. Actually I know what your archetype is. You love catching prospects, catching catchers and arms. I know that's like a big thing for you. Unfortunately, Braden Montgomery is no longer a pitching prospect like he used to be back when
Mm.
he was at Stanford. But I want to know what your thoughts are on him because I know that you kind of did a really good like prelude into like, and you're very and you have differing thoughts than the consensus on Braden Montgomery, from what I understand.
Yeah. Let me start by saying Braden Montgomery could be one of my all time misses in terms of this vibe. And I know I like to joke Reese when I say things like, all right, silence pro scout, silence statistics, a vibes guy is talking. This is when vibes Drew will come out here. I don't get the impression that Braden Montgomery will put all the pieces together. Hmm, I think that the switch hitting experiment needs to end immediately. I think that he needs to be a left-handed bat exclusively. I think that the power is there. I don't think the speed's going to be affected by the injury last season. I think that Montgomery, even dating back to his time as a prepster, was a guy who you were like, this is a major leaguer. I mean, this guy has the tools to be a major league baseball player. It's so much upside. Tyler Jennings, one of our scouts, incredible genius level guy in terms of prospects. He and I had some wonderful discussions about Montgomery in Arlington and how I'm so worried. I don't know what he's going to do to put it together. I think the Red Sox got immense value on him falling. $5 million is money that you're going to pay an elite talent. And again, Montgomery has shown himself to be mostly elite, but I'm kind of sliding him in my FYPDs. I think as of right now, I can just double check this. As of my most recent update on Halloween, I have Braden Montgomery at 12 in my FYPD rankings, behind guys like Bryce Rayner, Connor Griffin, Cam Smith, several others, and plus, others that are kind of in that realm for most people, I assume. But I'm curious, what do you make of Montgomery? Because I know I'm often the odd man out on him, and I admit he has immense talent.
So Montgomery, I completely agree. Before going into this, I watched some film on him, and he does need to ditch the right-handed swing. I just don't think it's playable at the professional level. He can do it in college, especially like during midweek games and everything like that.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, also being a left-handed hitter, like he does get the platoon advantage. So like even then, like I don't know, like I just would rather the left-hander if I'm turning a switch hitter, I'd rather him be the lefty than a righty. Be better at that. So I think it's something that really needs to be factored in when people are analyzing him. I think it's pretty crazy tools. Like, I mean, this is a guy who was like pretty like upper 90s when he was on the mound at a certain point. So, like, the arm is crazy. I don't think he's a great center fielder, and I don't think he profiles there. And in Boston,
Mm-mm.
it is very hard to be left field tends to be where you just stick someone for their bat, but left field in Boston's incredibly hard. And right field's also kind of weird. So it's a very weird it's very weird projecting where he goes. Does he? I mean, especially like he's going to be close to the majors, and Cedon Rafaela is an absolute monster out there in center field. The guy
Yeah.
might not be able to hit, but he can really go play center field. I mean, they need to stop with the shortstop nonsense with him. But I don't know, Montgomery. He's kind of a weird fit. I kind of agree with the like your skepticism because I do think he had some helium right when he got injured, which is very weird. Like around
It
draft
was
time, like this
bizarre.
guy's out. Like you don't normally see guys start to like gain some buzz right when they get injured. Like I understand that people are paying more attention to the draft the closer and closer it gets. But for someone, I forgot what was his injury again. Like it totally escapes me. I have to keep track of all these injuries and everything
Oh,
during the season. It was something with a
it
leg. Like
leaves.
he was on crutches.
Yeah, I want to say it was shin or ankle, maybe a broken ankle, but I please don't quote me on that. Again,
Yeah,
Tyler and I discussed it in Arlington. Or, excuse me, not Arlington. Fort Worth. We discussed it at our Airbnb, and I questioned whether or not that would kind of dampen the 2020 upside everybody keeps throwing around. And Tyler's suggestion was that it wouldn't. Doing research medically, which is bizarre, me doing medical research. What am I thinking? I'm no doctor. But anyhow, just I don't think it'll damage it, but I don't know. I will say for the plus side for Montgomery, redonkulous power, plus power for sure. I think he had exit velos over like 115, if I'm not mistaken, last year, and
yeah.
really good feel for the barrel. It's, I don't know. And to answer your question, I think right field is probably better, just because there's gonna be a more impactful bat for sure somewhere, and I think we'll talk about some of them here in a minute. I think there's a more impactful bat that needs kind of the easier job of left. And Montgomery isn't even, well, I'd say right is probably the better fit because he isn't a center fielder at the next level, particularly in Boston. But either way, I it's plus tools too. I don't want to be like, oh, this guy hates Braden Montgomery. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But at the same time, I don't know. I think it's valid skepticism. So hearing you kind of acknowledge that I'm not just losing it, Reese, it makes me feel a little validated.
I'm glad I can help.
Thank you. I don't know, man. I think with Montgomery particularly, I mean what they're paying him $5 million to be picked 12 overall. The Red Sox have faith in him, and so, like we said a minute ago, they're clearly working to develop players in a good way, as we've seen because we've just broken down players 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6. Chase Meadroth, Luis Perales, Franklin Arise, Miguel Bleis, and just recently Braden Montgomery. And Reese, when we come back, we're going to be talking about prospects 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 in the Boston Red Sox system right here on Path to the Show on Bally's Live and Stadium. Come back, won't you?
Bally Live's MILB channel is where baseball's future lives. Visit ballylive.com or download the app today. Path to the Show keeps rolling all off-season. Tune into Bally Live and watch as we dissect every club's farm system and top prospects. From single to AAA, we've got you covered.
Welcome back to Path to the Show on Valley Live and Stadium. We're going to go through our top 10 prospects, and we're going to finish it up with we're going to go 5 through 1 in this section, and we're going to start with maybe one of the most interesting names you'll come across, maybe ever, in Justinson Garcia. Shout out to your friend and mine, Drew, Chris Clegg. He made it on Baseball Reference, and with the nickname for Justinson, The Password. Garcia is someone who I wrote his report, and I want to know what your thoughts are on after I kind of want to break down his tools a little bit. It's an above average
Please.
hit, above average power. He's got a good arm, but he's kind of not great in center field, but that's fine. I think the Red Sox are in a really good spot. He was weirdly left unprotected and then had a breakout season, unprotected from the Rule 5 draft. And then he just shot through the minors. He started out in single A, made his way all the way up to double A towards the end of the season. And the dude could not stop hitting. He might be in a normal system, like you would call him like the breakout prospect, but obviously there's a better breakout prospect that we'll talk about later. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on Justinson.
It's odd because, Justinson is essentially, in my brain, a bat with no home defensively. In the fantasy scope, doesn't really matter. I mean, beyond just having a place to play him, the bat is really what you're concerned about. I mean, unless you're playing in a league that has like DRS or whatever, which is sick. I mean, that's dope if you do. But anyhow, uh, like you said, above average hit, above average power. He's got a good arm, but it's like the outfield motions. I'm not a scout, Reese. You're gonna have to help me here. He just looks a little clunky. Is that the word I'm looking for? Because at the plate, it feels good. It's good bat to ball. It's a good approach. Spreads it around from what I've seen. Attacks the outer half, which is interesting. Pokes some kind of prods the other way. I believe is you said. Yeah, I believe you used the word poke even. I don't know really what he is defensively. And we talked earlier in the show about, Braden Montgomery and how he might have to be a right fielder. And I think Justinson Garcia might be one of the guys you kind of are just like, all right, you go handle left, and then we'll see you in the next half inning when you're up to bat. I don't know. I think for fantasy purposes, the defensive home doesn't matter as much, but, pro ball, half the game is how you play in the field. So, Reese, is clunky a fair way to put that? Is that what am I trying to say here in scout terms?
He is a little clunky, especially like when you do see him in center field. It seems like he's a half tick behind, like the ball,
Mm.
like he doesn't make the best reads, so he kind of has to, and he doesn't have the foot speed to really make up for those suboptimal reads. I do wonder if he's someone that we're gonna have to talk about, like a move to the infield and move to first base, because I think that that might be the best way to get the bat in, unless he's DHing. But then the Red Sox kind of have a DH in Yoshida, although there's talk that he might be moved at some point this season or off season. But Justinson, he's just someone who I think even if he has to go play left field, he plays first base. He kind of rotates around, clogs, is able to contribute in the DH spot. Like we're talking about him for the bat. I don't think we're ever going to be talking about him. He's never going to win a Gold Glove, although that doesn't stop certain people like Juan Soto from being nominated for Gold Gloves. So
Sure.
you never know. He might be famous enough that he might just be added Derek Jeter style. But yeah. So the password, he's just he's kind of like he's just been really really good this season after not being like anything like notable during his minor league career up until this season. So I don't think he's a flash in the pan, but I do think that needs to be taken into account a little bit when people are getting aggressive with him, like I've seen in some trades in some of my leagues that are opening up trading, which has been kind of interesting because it's a little early.
It is early. I'll say this. First of all, Red Sox fans watching this are hyped because not only did you just dunk on Derek Jeter in the Red Sox show, but you also are hyping up Yestinson Garcia. So you got to talk about the stats, though. We haven't even talked about the stats. The password has been just mashing over 2024, led all Red Sox minor leaguers with 23 home runs last year, had 17 stolen bases, which, of course, doesn't really sniff the Miguel Bleis, Franklin Arias levels of 35 plus. But then, I mean, we're going to look at one of my favorite statistics here, isolated power. And looking again at Mr. Garcia, it's an isolated power metric of 250. Those of you at home who don't know, isolated power is slugging minus average. Looks essentially at the raw power you put into every piece of contact that you make. A good way to kind of gestate what power might be hidden in BABIP oriented results. So a 250 ISO with 23 home runs shows that Garcia has very real power and again, non-negligible speed, which is a phrase that I hate to say, but I mean a 7.1 speed score and then 17 stolen bases. I will say though, just about a 25% caught stealing rate leaves me to think that he's probably at the major league level more of a 22 and 5 type guy. Chip and steals will win you leagues. Who am I to judge? But I do love the numbers, and Garcia, as you said, has been a great pop-up player this season.
Yeah, I mean, he hit 286, 356, 536 across three different levels, and he's definitely going to be out of the 40 man. That's for sure. There's no way that the Red Sox are leaving
Yeah.
him unprotected. He might have been the person, being out of the 40 man is such a big deal for prospects. I think that he's someone who, like, I wonder if he's someone who like move in a trade because the outfield is getting pretty
Mm.
clogged in Boston, and I think that he might be a prime trade candidate. Do you want to keep talking about him, or do you want to talk about who some might consider the best prospect going into this season, but now he's comfortably the fourth of what I'm thinking is a big four in Boston?
We've covered Garcia extensively, and I think that just by saying Marcelo Meyer is our fourth ranked Red Sox prospect, there are Red Sox fans at home going full Kevin McAllister. They have no idea what we're on right now. And Reese, I'm curious, can you break down why it was that yourself and Matt and the Pro Scout team decided Meyer ranks fourth here?
So a big thing for us with Meyer is that we don't know if he's a shortstop. And that kind of everything takes a tick down because of that. He's a really good hitter. Like most guys like that they get drafted as highly as he is. I mean, he was like the fourth overall selection. It was kind of a shock
Mhm.
selection that he fell that far. People thought he was like a lock to go to Detroit at 3. And Henry Davis. Ooh, I don't remember who went second in that draft. But I won't stall too long. But Mayer was viewed as the safe plus the upside pick because he could play shortstop, and I don't think he can. Like, he's got a good arm. I think he has to move off to like third base, which puts more pressure on the bat, which is objectively very good. It's a very good contact profile with decent power. I don't think the power has ticked up the way that we kind of hoped. I mean, he had 8 home runs this season in Double A. We're getting close to the majors, and it's starting to become like, when is that 20 to 25 home run power going to start showing up? He did hit, to his credit, 307, 370, 480, but it's just the lack of power that kind of and the not good defensive home. Like, he's probably going to be third base. He's probably just going to be fine there. That kind of made him fall while others rose.
Mhm. It's interesting too because we heard so much when Meyer was being drafted, and in that draft cycle, I swear I heard A Rod and Corey Seager comps so many times it made me sick. But the power development has been such a big part of that. I expected when you were answering that question that the power development and I guess lack thereof would have been what you pointed to here for Marcelo Meyer because that's my key concern. Now that being said, I feel like if I'm not mistaken, I'm the highest guy in our dynasty team on Meyer at this point, which I never would have thought I was. I've always been a little low on him just because I try to be pragmatic without projecting so much on these guys, but I don't know. I think there could be more development, but I mean, Meyer even isn't as much of a. I mean, I think his speed is honestly probably comparable to just Stinson Garcia. It's in the range, I should say. Neither burners by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm curious what that will be. I know the contact is there, the bat to ball is there, uh, batting average will be there. I don't know. It's a curious profile, but I think the floor is just made of marble. So whether it's 8 foot ceilings or vaulted ceilings is the question here. I think if it's 8 foot ceilings with a marble floor, beautiful, but at the same time, probably a little out of place, and you wish it had a nicer surrounding, maybe a nice Monet on the wall behind it. I don't know that Meyer's going to have vaulted ceilings and a Monet, but it might be a beautiful marble floor.
I agree. The big problem for him is that he stopped lifting the ball as much. He was pulling the ball. He pulls the ball around 45%, like above that. He doesn't really go the other way. He doesn't really attack up the middle. He really tries to pull batted balls. But the problem was that he stopped lifting batted balls. And he's got the contact skills that I think he can sell off some of that average. I mean, he hit 307, like I mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
but he could sell off some of that for a little bit more power. And I think that kind of helps the profile a little bit more, especially like as he might have to transition to third base, or I don't think he moves to second base, but he's definitely like third base. I mean, there was talks even when he was drafted that this guy might have to move to first base. So
Mhm.
it's about the bat with him, and the bat is good. it just leaves a little bit to be desired. I worry he might become an empty calorie batting average sort of guy, but I do think there is the opportunity for him to develop more power.
So then, let me ask an odd question before we move on to number 3. What separates Marcelo Meyer from being the French vanilla that we called Chase Meadroth in your mind?
I think that there is more usable power than Meadroth, and I think that the hit tool is a little bit better.
I agree. Okay, just making sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. He might be like creme brulee. Like that might be like what he is.
Creme
Like
brulee is a perfect.
Because he's going to be really
Hey,
good.
he is going to be really good, and he's a major leaguer almost inevitably. I think that there's too much invested in him for not be a major leaguer. But I think even in terms of fantasy, he's going to be a useful fantasy player for at least the first 3-4 years, and then we'll see kind of what comes from that with the power development. But I'll tell you somebody who is far more than creme brulee and plays at a wonderful position. Can we talk about catcher Kyle Teal, please?
I never thought you would ask. I love Kyle Teal. Do you know, so a little how the sausage is made? I feel like we're doing a lot of food references today. I am
That's
probably really
fine.
hungry. So he is someone who in the beginning of the list process, I mentioned to Matt, who him and I kind of bounce ideas off of each other. I'm like, what if Kyle Teal is the best Red Sox prospect? Ultimately, we didn't end up there, but there was a point in the list making cycle where I thought Kyle Teal, he's a good catcher. He can really hit. There's some power, and he's a better athlete than your average catcher. Like he's not Dalton Varsho, and Dalton Varsho is still catching, but he's a tick below that. Like he's still a really good athlete. He could go play like left field, right field would be really good. The arm is leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's going to be enough to hold the run game. He's going to be a really good offensive catcher while also being a good defensive catcher, good enough defensive catcher. I wonder like where he hits in a lineup because the big thing with catchers is, as we saw with Adley Rushman this year, is that one bump or bruise and the entire offensive profile takes a dip, right? Like that was the big deal with Adley Rushman. So that's my only fear with him. It's not something that he can control. As a catcher, you just get bumps and bruises all year. Like I feel like Austin Hedges, who shout out him, he just got a new 1 year, $4 million deal. He's probably taken a bunch of bruises his entire career. But Kyle Teal, he's a better hitter than Hedges ever was. And I think he's just someone who I want to be involved in fantasy, but I don't know how much I want to, if I want to get too deep in on it, because I am worried about the offensive offensive production taking a dip if he ever, takes one of those bumps and bruises that catchers normally take.
Yeah. I'm not the one to ask because I'm always going to say invest in the catcher, the prospects. So
Right.
don't ask Drew. But I will say Teal was far and away the best catcher that I saw at the Futures game in terms of just the live look and him behind the plate. Truly exceptional. And we'll talk about Drake Baldwin in a couple of weeks for the Atlanta Braves, just kind of right there behind him. But Ethan Salas as well with the Padres right there. But Teal is just so poised. And like you said, the arm isn't otherworldly, but he just gets it. And the offensive prowess just makes it so much better. Teal's pretty comfortably for me a top 100 prospect. And I think had you asked me in, call it August, I'd have maybe agreed with you that Teal was the best Red Sox prospect. But there are guys that just edge him out. There are two dudes particularly that are top 10 fantasy assets, no matter who you ask right now, or at least in terms of prospects.
Yeah, and one of them is Christian Campbell, who I also at one point thought might be the top Red Sox prospect. And I think in a fantasy sense, you could argue he might be a better prospect than Roman Anthony because second base, as we know at the major league level, is a little diminished than it normally
Mm-hmm.
is. And Campbell has everything going for him. He makes optimal swing decisions. He hits for more power than you would think for someone who's, he's a little bit on the frailer side. Like he's not super big by any means. He's not like he's not one of those guys that like when, the SEC football teams come in, he's not the first off the bus, but he's definitely a
Mm-hmm.
good athlete. Like he's a professional level athlete. He's a good runner. He's a little bit dicey in the outfield, but ultimately I think this guy is just the second baseman of the future and might be the present. Like I think he has a chance to break camp with the team. I mean, this is a guy who posted 90% in zone contact rates. He only whiffed 18.2% of the time, which is really, really good. And for someone with that sort of profile, he also hit for quite a bit more power than you would think. He's a great scouting find by the Red Sox. Like he was from Georgia Tech. He was a fourth round pick, so there was some money involved in him. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't this at Georgia Tech.
No, and again, you want to hang your hat on something, Red Sox fans. Campbell is a perfect illustrator. And we talked about guys who they've developed and guys they could further develop. Campbell is nothing, like you said, a gem. You find a gem, you polish it, and then you put it on the mantle with the others, or I guess in the Infinity Gauntlet, or however you want to look at this. Campbell, as you referenced, hit 330 last season, slugged 558. So again, using isolated power, which we talked about earlier, that's a 228 isolated power, 20 home runs. The 228 reference puts Campbell pretty safely in about the top 10 of any minor leaguer on the team. Beyond that, you're again looking at a guy, the power, like we said, otherworldly. The hit tool is so strong. He is going to run. He will contribute stolen bases. I think he's a second baseman, and I can't tell you that it's not as soon as opening day 2025. I think that it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Campbell would be overmatched necessarily. And I'll tell you one other thing. And again, I know last episode I put foot into mouth by even alluding that Spencer Jones has similar, development traits as Aaron Judge. But a patron on our Patreon, Prospects Live Patreon, asked me this summer, is Christian Campbell the starter kit for Mookie Betts? And then when you compare them level to level, age to age, it's not really wrong. Now, again, Christian Campbell is not Mookie Betts, but they're performing similarly at similar ages and levels of the minor leagues. Campbell could be very, very special. And for that reason, he was our Prospects Live minor league batter of the year, as you well know, buddy.
He was incredible. Like, and the thing is that when you look at the offensive profile, like he pulls the ball, he even has a chance to lift more too, and lift and pull. Which and his home games, like hitting above the green monster is kind of tough, but he could spray doubles at that thing as long as he wants. I don't think he's Mookie Betts. It's hard. You can't really compare like guys to like outliers, right? Like Mookie Betts has
Right.
maybe the greatest bat to ball I've ever seen. Like I didn't grow up watching like some of the best like contact hitters, but Mookie Betts is like that for me. Like when I think of an 80 hit tool, he's that.
It's irresponsible for us to comp Christian Campbell to a Hall of Famer. And I mean, it would take something catastrophic, either on a personal level or on the field. Like Mookie would have to immediately nosedive Hulk Hogan to become a non-Hall of Famer. But I think that it's a more realistic chance that he is an above average major leaguer based on the comparison level to level, age to age.
As much as I would love to keep talking about him and Mookie Betts, I think we have to get to one more guy. And Roman Anthony, he is just a different level of dude. He is physically imposing. He's got power. I think the thing is that I think there's more power to come. This is a dude who might hit 30. I mean, if you were to ask me one prospect in the minor leagues who was going to hit 40 home runs, Roman Anthony would be my bet. Like he would definitely, I'd put that stamp in. Like he shows a little bit more contact than the profile would, than you would think. I think he's someone who he has the chance to be an absolute star, and he can't play center field in a team with Ceddanne Rafaela, but that doesn't mean that he's not a good center fielder. That just means that he has to move to right or left field and be plus there. Like there's a whole different like stratosphere prospect that him and Campbell, I think they're a tier above like Teal and Marcelo, but I think he's someone who he just might be. He's like the number one prospect in baseball. I think. I don't know if I can really. I feel like I might have to like galaxy brain myself into like ranking someone else above him. But he's someone who I'm just like he hit 18 home runs. He stole 21 bases. I think there's a little bit more swing and miss there, but I think that can be cleaned up. He's only 20 and he made it to AAA. So like this dude could be special.
Very, very special. And again, if we're going to talk about how the sausage is made, I'll just tell you from my perspective. I can explain me. I've long been a guy that the other members of the team have said, Anthony needs to be higher on your list. I've always doubted a bit. Again, the futures game, the skills competition, you see Anthony come up in the essentially what equated to the home run derby and just bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb. I think it was 5 or 6 in a row, and the poise to do that is otherworldly from the left. It's a good body. This is a player who is a top 5 fantasy player for me. Our our fantasy team had him as our number 1 prospect in all of baseball at the end of the season, and for good reason. The Roman Empire is coming one way or the other, and I think everybody needs to be prepared for it.
It's on the top of all of our minds. It's all us dudes think about. And after that,
All
we're
we
gonna
think
go.
about.
We're gonna go to take our final break here on Path to the Show here at Stadium Valley Live. But after the break, we make our predictions on which prospects could make the biggest impact on the Red Sox in the future. Stick around and find out, and we'll be right back.
Path to the Show keeps rolling all off-season. Tune into Bally Live and watch as we dissect every club's farm system and top prospects. From single to AAA, we've got you covered. Visit prospectslive.com for top prospects rankings, video, scouting reports, and live action write-ups. Join their Patreon and get exclusive insights to dominate your fantasy league.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Path to the Show on Bally's Live and Stadium. And we are winding down this great episode talking about the Boston Red Sox farm system. And it is a loaded one. We've said it all show long, whether it's been food analogies, whether it's been common, feelings about certain players and worries about certain players. But now we're shifting to something different. Reese, to wrap up the show, I'd like for you to tell me which player you're most certain will have a major league promotion in 2025.
So I think it might be Christian Campbell. I don't think it might be. I know it'll be Christian Campbell. The only question is it opening day or is it when Super 2 hits? And I think with a talent like him and the way in which the Red Sox are set up, they kind of need the production from the jump. Like they don't really have a second baseman that you really feel too confident in. You can just come up and, ease him into the lineup, hit him 7th, hit him 8th, and kind of just allow him to, go through that rookie learning process and everything. What about you?
I think that you got to go with Roman Anthony. As you said before the jump, we think about it at least once a day, the coming of the Roman Empire. And I think that I'd be foolish not to say that I think that's coming in 2025. The playing time is going to be a little sus. Like you said, the outfield is kind of a jammy jam situation there. I think that Anthony can break through it, though. Like I said, you see a guy putting on a show in a major league ballpark, you don't forget it very soon. So, Reese, again, going to ask you a different question, man. Which player in this system do you have the most faith in? Maybe not for next season, but in a general sense, who has you the most hyped?
I'll keep it quick. I mentioned that he might be the number 1 prospect. At one point, I thought he was in the system. Kyle Teel, because he's a catcher and he can hit.
Absolutely. Spoken after my own heart, first of all. I love Kyle Teel, and I think that I'll give an honorable mention to Franklin Arias, who I think will develop more power, and I think next time is going to, next season, he will be at the top of this list. I think that he's going to take the spot of some of these guys. He's very exciting, and I know you share that enthusiasm, right, Reese?
I do. I very much do. I think he's going to be the next wave, and the part of the next wave for the Red Sox.
Absolutely. And in terms of who I have the most faith in, it's hard to say not Christian Campbell. I think he's going to be next year. And if you made me pick right now, your question earlier, I think it's opening day. I have a good feeling, man. I have a good feeling. And Christian Campbell, I think, is going to deliver on this meteoric rise through the ranks. But that will do it for this episode of Path to the Show live on Bally's and on Stadium. Reese, tell the folks at home where they can find you in between our episodes, sir.
You can find me on Twitter at Reese B. White and pretty much anywhere else that the guy looks like me on social media.
It's a good-looking guy, so yeah, be on the lookout for him. And you can find me on the Twitter machine at DrewIsOK. And we will see you coming up on future episodes. We're going to finish the AL East, then we're going to work the way through the rest of the prospect systems around Major League Baseball. Be sure to check out our work on Prospects Live and stay tuned for more episodes of Path to the Show, because we've got top 10s and we've got good content that you're going to enjoy all off season long. So until next time, toodaloo. Thanks for watching this episode of the show. Bye-bye.
Visit prospectslive.com for top prospects rankings, video, scouting reports, and live action write-ups. Join their Patreon and get exclusive insights to dominate your fantasy league.